The one thing that I realized young is I didn't want to work for anybody else. I wanted to work for myself. Yeah. So I knew that you have to become an entrepreneur and you have to start your own business. I did some paving early on in my life. That's real work. Yeah. That's a real job. Like I was like 17, 18 years old. I felt like I had one foot in the grave working that job.
Sure.
And I knew I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. Yeah. I also knew that I was young enough that if things didn't work out, I could always go back and pave roads and be a bellman at a hotel and things like that. That job was always going to be available. Yeah. So I took all the risks at a young age. If you don't take risks, you will never succeed, ever. It's so true, and it's one of the things that I always say, you know, loyalty and not forgetting what you thought and where you were and when you started, you know, is so important in business. Yeah. Ego and that type of stuff ruins some of the greatest products, some of the greatest businesses, some of the greatest friendships, bands, and it's just completely unnecessary. You're losing money. Yeah. Everybody wants to point the finger at whose fault it is. Yeah. And then when it turns around, you start making money, everybody wants to say it's me, me, me. Yeah. And then you start having differences in opinions and you see all these great things break up because of ego. Yeah. We all make mistakes. People are gonna make mistakes. And when you make the mistakes, it's how you handle yourself after you make that mistake. Do you come clean? Are you honest? You know, do you say, listen, I messed up and I made a mistake. We're all humans, man. We're gonna make mistakes. It's how you handle yourself after you make that mistake. It's about respect. It's about loyalty. It's about treating each other right and, you know, and keeping your ego in check. Yeah. Listen, there was a point in time in my life when I was 26 years old. And when I was 26, I proposed to my wife and I was getting married and, you know, I'm gonna have a wife and I'm probably gonna have kids soon. And, you know, then you start getting sucked into all the things that people put in your head. 401k, health insurance, you know, retirement and all this other stuff. You know, typical young guy, you end up, you know, you have to get a job, you have to make money and you have to do stuff like that. Because at one point when we got married, I went back and got a job again. I'm like, yeah, it's time to grow up. I need to be a grown up. I went and got another job and I was like, yeah, this grown up shit. I can't work for anybody else, man. I'm going back. You know, if you look at the landscape at that time and you say, yeah, I want to be in the fight business. Yeah. First of all, what the fuck does that even mean? What does being in the business mean? And how's there money in that? And, you know, it wasn't just like wasn't what people considered a normal job. And I went out and cut these deals and built these gyms and, you know, teach people how to box, whether it was businessmen, fighters, or whatever. Brian. So Brian over there, who is my security now, he was a kid. I trained him when he was a kid. Believe that people would love this sport that we were in love with as much as we did, right? We just had to get out there and present it the right way and get it on television. Now, when we bought it, it wasn't allowed on pay-per-view. Porn was on pay-per-view, but the UFC was not. That was the mountain that we had to climb. Gosh. This is what I love to do. I made this decision when I was 19 years old. So it's kind of tough talking about my work ethic because for me, there's no days off. There's no holidays. Around Christmas time, Hollywood shuts down from December 12th and they don't come back till like a week after New Year. So when these big major holidays come, all these other people that take holidays and they're on vacation, we don't. We keep right on cranking, keep working. We're on the phone every day. Christmas Day, I'm doing stuff. People always ask me, how do you do this and how do you have to do it? I mean, it's when you're building a business like the UFC or any other business, you know, you have to work and it never gets easier. I have kids too. So the time that I don't spend working, you know, where I'm not physically working, I'm with my kids, hanging out with my kids. I do two things. I work and I hang out with my kids. I devote so much time and energy to this. When I'm with my kids, I'm their slave. I do whatever they want me to do, whatever they tell me to do, wherever they want to go. And when I am with the kids, I am on the phone too. You know, the phone rings and there's stuff that needs to be dealt with. So there is no real downtime. Going on vacation, hanging out with them. My oldest son is a quarterback. He plays football now. I love watching him practice. I love watching him play. And anything that my kids are into, I like watching what they do. I wouldn't say that I was always ambitious. When I was a kid, I was your typical kid. I came from a family with a single mom. My dad was an alcoholic and was never around, and when he did show up, you didn't want him around. You know what I mean? I had a hardcore upbringing, you know. My mother used to tell me that I was gonna be just like my father and not amount to anything and things like that, and I was gonna be pumping gas into my friends' cars. And then my mother, you know, she worked a lot, wasn't around, so me and my sister were home a lot alone. We had to clean the house and do all the stuff that you have to do when you're a kid. But one of the things I think about growing up alone is, you know, there's a lot of stuff that you have to learn on your own. But I honestly wouldn't change one thing about the way that I grew up. In no way, shape, or form am I bitter, or I sit around and complain about, oh, this, that, or the other thing. If I didn't grow up the way that I did, I wouldn't be who I am today. I 100% firmly believe that. But the one thing that I can always say that I was very lucky is I always knew what I wanted to do. If you know what you want to do, you wake up every day and you work toward that goal. It's so much easier when you know what you want.